Greetings. Welcome to another episode of Innovation and Governance podcast. And today we're going to talk about technology, innovation, and technology governance, but maybe from a slightly fresher angle. And I'm very happy that we have two guests here. Karin Kruup, a long-time manager of Kopli 93 Community Center, partner at the Centrinno project, and now a fresh PhD student at Ragnar Nurkse department. Welcome.
Hello.
And Alex Pazaitis, you're a long-time researcher at Ragnar Nurkse. You have been studying commons, most recently degrowth and postgrowth. And you are one of the core members of the P2P research lab on the study of commons. Welcome.
Nice to have you.
And I'm your host, Peter Vihma. Well, you're both interested in technologies. You're both interested in their governance. But, when I introduced you, I already used some of the terminology or some of the words which might not be so familiar to our listeners. So maybe this is a good place to start. Could you say a few words? Maybe, Alex, you start with saying what are commons and what is post-growth?
Okay, so the academic way to define it is that the commons are socio-ecological systems that are self-managed by communities based on commonly agreed and enforced rules. Now, if you happen to speak in normal people, what you would say that, the commons are basically the things, the wealth, and the relations that we have in common. That includes like the gifts of nature, the forests, the rivers, the seas, our culture, our heritage, our collective knowledge, and also our personal relationships. All the things that we manage collectively as societies and that we need to inherit to the generations to come. And so commons, usually, recently we changed the wording from commons more to commoning because it is not so much of a static resource. It is a dynamic wealth of relations and people agreeing on how we can best take care of the things upon which our lives depend.
And how is technology and technology governance connected to this topic?
Well, the starting point has been the emergence of a new type of commons. With the emergence of the internet and widespread information and communication technologies, you had the resurgence of the commons through the digital form, in the form of free and open source software, open hardware, open knowledge in projects like Wikipedia, and this kind of resurfaced the research that has been going on the traditional commons. And so commons and commoning and the practices that emerged through this micro-universe of communities producing complicated products like, encyclopedias, operating systems, software, WordPress, the backbone of the internet, basically, in a way that it was reminiscent on how communities used to, manage pasture lands and fisheries. So they would contribute code to open platforms and then come up with an integrated product. And this brought about a new understanding of how technology could potentially be developed through human relationships. And I also realized I never responded to the post-growth question. So post-growth is or degrowth, or there are many terms that have evolved around the idea that, simply put, what if our economy and society was not predicated on the economy growing constantly? So this is not a direct call to degrow everything, while we need to degrow a lot of stuff in the face of climate crisis and so on, but it is rather a call to organize our societies in a way so that not everything needs to grow all the time, and this is not the only direction for an organization, a business, a government, and so on.
I think this conversation is quite interesting and important in the face of current economic slowing growth that we're experiencing now, not only in Estonia but otherwise. But Karin, you have put these terms that Alex was explaining into practice, if I understand correctly, in a community center which was built under your supervision in Kopli. It's called Kopli 93, I think it's the address, right? So could you tell a little bit about this? What was it, and also why did you build it, and what did it tell you? What did you learn from it?
Mm-hmm. So the story of the community center started with an EU-funded research project. So there was some resources that enabled to initiate and launch the site. And this project was called Centrinno, and it was made together with the Tallinn municipality. So it was an old abandoned culture center in Kopli Peninsula that's about becoming 90 years old soon. So quite an old community center that has been not used actively for like a few decades now. So it's not in a very good shape. And Centrinno, the idea behind Centrinno was to revitalize industrial heritage sites and make them and create community centers to increase the resilience of the community, to increase the capacity for local production, experiment with circular economy, and do it in a way that enables social inclusion. But for me, like the story behind the project and all the descriptions created the idea to use the heritage that we have here in Estonia. That's quite like down to earth, and our previous generations are still like my generation. I'm pretty young, I would say. Still, I have the memories of growing food and going to the countryside, and we have very hands-on grandparents that repair things, that are very capable of providing for their needs. I think it was a bit different from the background that many other cities and places and pilot sites that were in the Centrinno. So I in the beginning of the project, I made this joke that we have to start teaching the grandma and grandpa skills, but it was told as a joke. For me, it was very serious because I'm really inspired by many of the grandparents. But somehow it became like a central theme in Centrinno, and we talked about it a lot, and this really inspired the program. But because we face the situation of polycrisis today, like we have the climate crisis, we have social inequality, we have all different challenges and problems in the society today, and we have to solve them not only looking back but really looking forward, because not all the solutions that work in the past are going to work in the future, that we really cannot predict. So the underlying idea was that we have to increase the capacity of the citizens to adapt to whatever circumstances they find themselves in the future. And this comes down to having skills, having community, being socially networked, just trusting the people who live around you, because very often people are afraid the other person the most, and not some hurricanes, although hurricanes are very scary and dangerous as well.
But what did people do in the Kopli Center?
Yes, so what it came down to was to create a platform where people can interact practically and interact with those opportunities to learn things and build this community. And we created a community garden, a community apiary, and the first public community makerspace of Tallinn. So 3 important components. So makerspace is, for example, very good for this commons-based projects. For example, you have an open source design that you can see and look and download, and on a local setting, just using local tools and materials available, you can build projects that really serve some of the needs or some of the give us the technologies that we can make our lives easier and have this well-being despite that maybe sometimes I don't know, if you have a crisis and the things you order from China are not coming or arriving quickly enough or at all. So you can have this peace of mind that at least you're like capable of building many of the things. For example, we have built a small-scale wind turbine in the makerspace, and it's really surprising how simple the makerspace can be and what you can do with it. Like our idea was to build this garage that the grandparents or the grandpa has, like very simple, have some woodworking tools, maybe like a few modern tools, but we didn't even use like many very fancy things to build a wind turbine. So it was surprisingly simple. But I think what is even more important than all the like the infrastructure that we have there in Kopli is that it's for free for the citizens. It's now like covered by the city. Everybody can go. Everybody can renovate their own, I don't know, chairs and build their furniture, repair some of the like simple electronic things. They can grow their plants in the garden. Although, yeah, this is all very nice, but the most important thing is that you have like facilitated, you have this free program that you don't come there, there's no like teacher like, oh yeah, now we do this all together, just watch how I do it, but it's all like flexible. People can teach each other, they can come and go, like when the makerspace, for example, is open, come when they want, leave when they have to, join the community, join the activities as often as they like, and it creates this freedom to really start to talk to people. And many of, like, for example, the local people, many neighbors have met the first time in the Kopli 93 community center. And even when I go to Kopli, I feel like I'm a local because I can say hello, like on the street a lot. And it's very, I think, uncommon in cities. I don't live in Tallinn anymore. So like in a smaller place, it's much more common. But I never had this feeling in Tallinn before having this community center. Yeah.
So this is called the Kopli Center, sort of in practice, an example of how innovation can spread using the digital infrastructure that we have, but then emerge through these common spaces in these locations, right? If I'm not understand correctly.
Yes.
So the kind of the bigger question, what can we learn about it? So can we say something meaningful from these experiences that you had in Kopli and in other locations in the same project about how should cities, I don't know, for example, Tallinn, be governed, or maybe how should technology and technological innovation in the polycrisis, as you said, be governed in Estonia and larger units in the States? Maybe you have some ideas about that.
Why I'm a huge fan of community centers and platforms like this is that they are interdisciplinary and they create a place where all different kinds of stakeholders and level of like governance and citizenship can come together and have a dialogue and just like meet and become familiar as people. And this has been like a wonderful journey to see how like a regular citizen who has even no idea how maybe public administration is done or how the city is governed, they can, like through this project, through this Kopli 93 experiment, had this possibility to sit on the same table behind like the local administrators and discuss issues. And many things got solved through this process because they had this direct contacts. And I think this is one of the things we have to do better in the future, is that to have this really like good contact with the local setting. So if you're far away, you cannot make the best decisions about the resource or about the situation if you're not there daily. Although it's efficient to sit like behind your table far away in an office and like make decisions, but today it's not possible anymore. We have to be better.
Alex?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack from the Kopli 93 experience. Among the many vibrant communities around the world that we have been studying for the past 15 years, trying different ways to approach, public space, public infrastructures, the things that they can collectively manage and so on. And I sort of remember back in my master's years, we have this wonderful professor called Erik Reinert, who I remember he used to say that if you want to know how wealthy a city is, you should count the number of professions that there is in there. So I think one of the biggest problems when in the face of the types of challenges and crisis and whatever we have already happening now and expected to get worse into the future is that we have this monoculture of economy and society, that we're so much deep into a specific expertise, or you have a city that is almost a city entirely inhabited by engineers, or at least we think so. And so in Kopli, it is not only that you get to see people to develop the new skills that we may need to do simple things like repair a chair or something that we take for granted. The chair breaks, we buy a new one from China. So this is a change of mindset towards the things that we can do, but it's also a change of understanding of what the city is made of. Because then you see that there is not just engineers running the city, there's all sorts of people that are almost invisible, and they're so necessary into maintaining our common infrastructure, into taking care of our kids, into all those sorts of things that we take for granted, but there are actually people doing that. There are structures in place to maintain that. And so this is why I think the commons is not so much a prescription or like a normative direction. This is how things should be done. It is more of an ontology on how to look on things actually being done today. So understanding that how much of what we have is actually being taken care in common, and we often forget about it and we take them for granted, and this is where it starts to dissipate, and when we start to lose our resilience and our sustainability as society. And I think Kopli is for me the greatest lesson is to fight back against this arbitrary idea that of course this is not a free for all. Everyone can come, can participate, and so on, but there's still rules, and those rules are maintained by the community. So there is no higher authority that will allow you to enter and will tell you what your role and what your skills are. You can experiment and participate, but you need to respect the collective rules. And I think this is fighting against the greatest disillusion of our times, that, people cannot manage things together. We're doing this every day. The point is to make these relationships more conscious and to bring them to the fore, and also get them recognized by formal institutions like a municipality, so that we can earn this seat on the table and take back, control and agency over the things that decide upon our lives.
Mm-hmm. I understand that the municipality is on the table, and then Tallinn city government has taken over the maintenance, the management of this center after the project ends. But you mentioned engineers, and maybe this is a topic that is suitable to address as we are talking in the basement of a great engineering university, Tallinn University of Technology. It's proud source of the best engineers in Estonia, and currently the debate about what the engineers should do and what is their role in the society is very important. So either this research on governing the commons or your research about the different pathways to growth, or your practical examples and centers that put these things in practice, do they give any lessons to the engineering education, to what kind of engineers, what kind of engineering education or engagement of engineers do we want or need in the future?
Yeah, I started my studies in computer science and I ended up having a degree in economics in my bachelor's, but still the computer science journey was very influential. And I ended up having like a minor, like side degree on the computer science. And I worked many years, some years in the startup sector, and I would say in Estonia this sector at the moment is very, very specialized, and not many things are thought about, like the reflection over technology, like what is it good for, in what situations we tend to shift the problems that are not technological to like trying to solve them through technology, and I think like something should be done in order to achieve the situation where the engineers and other fields, like other specialists and other fields, like come together to understand the big picture and the influence the technology can have in our society.
Yeah, I'm a social scientist working at a technological university, so I like to say that part of my job is to annoy engineers with reminding them that there are people around. But jokes aside, I have high respect for the engineering craft to create things out of nothing, to fix problems, providing practical solutions, and so on. But I think if I were to pin it down to one thing that is missing from engineering education is the capacity to be surprised and learn from places that you wouldn't otherwise think. As this expertise gets deeper and deeper, and these people are, getting through a long journey from education to practice to professional experience, where they're being given problems and they provide solutions. But they have been doing this in a way that is largely divorced from the interactions upon which these solutions are functioning and how they need to be taken up and adopted by society and so on. And for instance, if you look at agroecology, just a random example, one of the first principles when you're doing agroecology in a place is that you first go and observe. And that can be such a game-changing activity that instead of going to say, I have this solution for you, let's apply it, is to first go and observe and try to understand the patterns of how things work. And this can feel a bit humbling, but it can also be very empowering.
So maybe for ending this discussion, this provokes very many ideas in me, and I'm sure in the listeners as well. How can this theoretical and practical expertise really help us to bring sort of build resilience in the society on very small scale, but also on a larger scale in terms of just repairing chairs or doing whatever people need, but then also bringing about the change that we are expecting from otherwise perhaps just large-scale management of technologies. So, but what about you? What kind of questions are evoking you? I know, Karin, you are just embarking on a journey of PhD, and Alex, I know that you're in pursuit of new projects and research ideas. So maybe you can say a few words. What are these pressing questions that inspire you? What are you going to look into for the next couple of years, or what should we be looking into for the next couple of years? Alex, maybe what are the new initiatives for you that are in the baking? I know that you have been sharing these ideas at our department seminars and elsewhere.
Well, that's again a lot to unpack here, because one of the things that research is about is coming up with new ideas and trying to find ways to fund them, and then you get into the buzzword bingo. What is the latest trends around? And it is hard to understand which ideas come from you and which come from the establishment that you're trying to fit into. But then again, maybe that's also a good thing, because ideas are not just an individual invention. They emerge out of interactions and collective relationships and making sense of the world together. And so some of the bigger things that we're looking at is to find new ways that these sorts of experiments that we have been examining and exploring and piloting in a rather restrained scale how they can create a greater influence and be a viable pathway and an opportunity, not as a form of hobby for people to go around and experiment with communities, but actually base at least partially our livelihoods onto that. If we can have something like from commons-based community makerspace, if we can have community kindergartens, or if we can have community forms of transportation, so that we can place more of the activities that are very basic in our everyday lives into this sphere of making sense of them in common. And of course, this is a huge endeavor that there is a political economy upon which our salaries rely, and that we somehow need to abide by, that are to a large extent completely contradictory to this way of doing things. But then again, what we're trying to look for is the sorts of synergies and synthesis, so that the diverse perspectives can come into a flux and create something new, for instance. And this is where I think places like Kopli are really important learning spots on how you can have, grassroots activists that want to build a community garden collaborate with a local municipality, and the municipal officers who, they have their own issues, they do their own job, they have their everyday lives. Why should they bother for a bunch of hippies that want to grow plants into the city? But then again, the interaction can create or can make visible the added value that there is for the system as a whole to flourish. And I'm not romanticizing, I'm not suggesting this has been easy. There's been a lot of work, and it needed a lot of resources to be pulled into until we're able to develop this trust and these types of relations. But the fact that this can happen is, for me, one of the most positive news in looking at a completely bleak future based on the best available data that we have.
Karin, I know that this is the most uncomfortable question for any new PhD student. What's your PhD about? But maybe you can shed light. What you're interested? What kind of questions do you pose to yourself?
Yes, one of my main assumptions at the moment is that surprisingly less or little deeds are necessary to create some momentum or change in a society. For example, if there's a community that takes care of its own resilience, then it's a gift to the entire rest of the society, because the rest of the society has to worry less about this kind of group of people. So if there's a person, a family, a community, an organization, or a city that looks over what it stands on, do the people have the capacity and trust that they can cover their basic needs in whatever situation comes? Because people start to worry about these things when crises happen, when they have experienced that some of the comforts and some of the things that were used to be easy are not easy anymore. It creates a lot of anxiety. But for example, if a person comes to Kopli 93 and those things are spoken about and people acquire a set of soothing beliefs, then it can really make a difference when something not that comfortable or crisis happens. And so one of the questions is how local or how small the change in a community, in a human's brain has to be enough to be able to adapt to the crisis. This is very interesting to me. And although I've read many books and I'm familiar to the theory of the crisis, and I the crises that have hit us were not surprise to me. Of course, what specific crisis that was a surprise, but that they are going to happen, I wasn't that surprised. I was even glad for example, of COVID, that it's not so bad. I was worrying about much worse things, but in many other people, I think, took it as very serious. And in the case of Kopli, like my motivations to create this place and to go and participate and run my own little like side pilots very aligned with Kopli at my home or in my own community. I understand this logic or this motivation, but I don't yet understand completely the motivations behind the other people, because many of them are not familiar at all. Like they haven't thought about the poly crisis. Maybe they are aware of like the climate crisis, or they don't understand all that like little connections and the like complex adaptive systems dynamics. Like they don't think about those things, but still like somehow we feel aligned in the values, and for some reason they feel the sense that they have to participate and this is necessary. And I'm very curious about what it is exactly. Because I think even in the like mainstream media, and it's often like talked about that we are not capable to change and nobody cares and people just want to consume fast fashion and drive fast cars and have big homes and they don't care. But I don't agree with that, because because of those beliefs, I had very, very low expectations for Kopli 93, and every year I was like completely like blown away how much there was interest. Like it's far away, like Kopli is a peninsula. It's not easy to get there even. It takes time. It's like dark. It's like a dangerous neighborhood, or people think that. It's not anymore, completely like gentrified. But they came, and now like thousands of people have visited and know about this place. So yeah, I would love to find out why they are there.
If I may, I think one of the undercurrents in Karin's attempt to explain the research interest is that when people think about research, they often think about data gathering and accumulating more data and more information and more modeling. And we have known about the climate crisis since the 50s, or at least oil companies did. We learned a bit later. But the numbers already from there, with the primitive technology, the mainframe computers that took up a whole room and so on, they're still very much accurate until today. The predictions on the resource depletion, on the energy needs, on in the way that society is going to develop based on the patterns of our economic growth back then. And so for me, these are of course I'm a social scientist, so the important question for me is not so much how much more detail can we get about the scary things that are going to happen in our lives, because, okay, we know it is scary. We're running out of time. Now we need to turn our attention into other things. What is it that makes a click into an individual's mind to change its mindset? What is this moment that changes on a collective level? What is it, the bare minimum that we need to achieve in order to foster this greater transition towards, something that would be fundamentally different? Mm-hmm. And these are questions that you need to actually get your hands dirty and work with people and try to understand where they're coming from, rather than making, all of these assumptions about human nature and what people want at all times.
These are really interesting questions. I agree with you, and they are so relevant, and they click into. We started talking about commons and ended up with big questions about the future of our societies and technologies and how people behave. So thank you very much for this discussion. For the listeners, go and check out Kopli 93. Check out the research that Alex and Karin are currently and have been doing. And thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.